Very entertaining racing on the mile-and-a-half track that is Echopark Speedway. And man, oh man, what a start to the season for 2311 and Tyler Reddick. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Echopark Speedway in Atlanta. No matter the configuration, this track puts on a phenomenal show. This configuration that we brought to you in 2022 with a little bit of higher banking and group racing at speeds of nearly like a drafting track at the Daytona Talladega has put on quite a show for the fans, especially now that we've gotten a little more age into this racetrack. You're seeing these guys manhandle these race cars left and right, making these slingshot moves, everything happening so fast you least expect it. And yes, there will be some chaos towards the very end when it starts to get down to crunch time, but at the end of the day, these guys put on a show for the fans at this racetrack, what might be the hottest ticket to go to. And so far this season, one guy for one of the biggest teams and the biggest names in all of sports history couldn't have asked for a better start to the year. Let's talk about all that happened yesterday at Echopark in Atlanta. Number one, back-to-back to open up the season. Tyler Reddick is on a roll as he won yesterday's Autotrader 400 at Echopark Speedway in Atlanta, beating out Chase Briscoe, Ross Chastain, Carson Hocevar, and Daniel Suarez for the victory. I mean, what a great start to 2026 for Tyler Reddick after all that he had to deal with last year with the lawsuit with 2311 Racing, with his son Rookie having that little tumor in his chest and having to go through surgery. He opens up the season last weekend winning the Daytona 500 thanks to a push from his teammate Riley Herbst on the last lap of turn number 4 to get by Chase Elliott and take victory, and giving 2311 Racing, Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan and Tyler Reddick their first Great American Race victory. It was a big weekend for Reddick and the team where he had the big media tour celebrating his 500 win as you normally do as the champion. He got on all the sports shows, all the big news shows, and yesterday he backed it up with his second win of the season. First time I think Tyler Reddick's ever won back-to-back races. Now, he started the race yesterday on the pole because qualifying Saturday got rained out. We had a massive storm move through the area. They had to set Cup qualifying aside and pretty much set it by the metric system, and that put Reddick on the pole for the race. And in the early going, he was really, really fast, but then we start to see him drop back a little bit and hang around the 10th to 12th place spot for a majority of the race because, again, handling was becoming a major factor in the race, and you saw some of the guys that had good handling race cars and that could go wherever they wanted to, move up from the middle of the pack all the way up to the front, and you had guys that started up there due to the metrics, drop back because they weren't happy with their cars handling-wise. Reddick was able to keep inside the top 10 for a lot of the race, and he at times was working with his teammate in Bubba Wallace, and they had to do battle with some of the other teams up there, like the Hendrick cars of Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott and William Byron, the Fords of Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney when he got there, Austin Cindric, Brad Keselowski was up there at times. But Reddick seemed to have a good car that could make moves when he needed to and was able to work well with the Toyotas. Then, when we got into the final stage of the race, as we're getting down to the closing laps, all of a sudden, things go bad for Tyler Reddick. When he's running in the middle of the pack, all of a sudden, right in front of him, there's an incident that collects his co-owner, Denny Hamlin, and he goes around into the pack, and it collects Tyler Reddick and many other drivers, and I'll get to that story a little bit later, but Reddick got damaged in that wreck and lost the right front fender, and I'm thinking, oh boy, well, at least he won the 500 last week, but not going to be a fun race the rest of the way to for Tyler Reddick in the 45. Tim felt like there's no way you could compete without a right front fender. Boy, was I wrong. That 45 car, as the sun continued to go down and as we got down to the closing laps, all of a sudden, here he comes from deep in the pack all the way up inside the top 5 with a chance at the victory. And I'm thinking, this is not possible, especially at a track like this and with this drafting style. Aerodynamics certainly mean a lot. Apparently not for Tyler Reddick in the 45 car, because he got himself inside the top 5. Then we had 2 overtime restarts, and on the final restart, he was able to make up for an opportunity right in front of him when his teammate Bubba Wallace lost the top lane and got passed on the inside by Carson Hocevar. That also allowed the bottom lane by Tyler Reddick to get a big run on the inside, and then when he got the push from Chase Briscoe, his fellow Toyota driver, it propelled Reddick right into the lead on the white flag lap and all the way home to the checkered flag. There was no way that the 19 was going to let anybody else win. He will push a Toyota to victory lane. But with no right front fender to go and win the race, at Atlanta is absolutely amazing by Tyler Reddick and the team. He got to celebrate with his wife. He had his older son Bo there, and of course MJ was in the building. They actually talked to MJ a couple laps before we got to the checkered flag of the race, and he was asked by Jamie Little how he's feeling. He's like, I'm nervous and everything, but I'm on the edge of my seat seeing two of my guys. He said, I just hope one of our boys brings home the checkered flag. Thankfully, the guy that got you your first Daytona 500 win was able to do that, again, with no right front fender. That's even more impressive. And for Tyler Reddick, again, as I talked about last week, this is a contract year for him. His contract with 2311 Racing expires after this year. I think it's safe to say there's no way he's leaving this team after you win the first two races of the season, that Daytona 500 and that race yesterday with no right front fender. There's no way they can let him walk. And as a matter of fact, they need to be discussing a contract extension with him right now, this week at the very least. They need to get a deal done so they don't let Tyler Reddick walk, because this guy can win this team a championship. He's just that good. So a big congratulations to Tyler Reddick, Billy Scott, and the 45 team. After getting caught up in a wreck, they rebound and take victory. Back-to-back weeks, season opening winner, Tyler Reddick. Number 2, Bubba falls short. Bubba Wallace had quite the car yesterday that could win the race. By far, I think, Bubba was the best of the Toyota camp yesterday. His car was constantly in the top 5, top 10 all race long. That number 23 Xfinity Toyota was one fast hot rod. He was able to work well with his teammate in Tyler Reddick and some of the other Toyota drivers that were able to find themselves up at the front towards the end, like Chase Briscoe, Christopher Bell, and at times that he was up there, his team owner, Denny Hamlin. But Bubba, I feel like, was in prime position to win the race yesterday, even though there were times where you couldn't constantly keep the lead. He was still able to get it back eventually with some big runs and help from behind. But then we get into overtime, those two restarts. And the first restart, he's on the inside lane with Christopher Bell on the outside, but ultimately that all changed after Bell gets turned, after Carson Hocevar shoots the gap and Bell goes into the wall. Bubba is still the control car up in front of the pack. Then we get to that final restart. Bubba gets a good launch off of turn number 2 and gets down the backstretch in front of the pack. So then he has to play defense. This is where he lost it. Bubba left a little bit high on the back straightaway, which opened up enough room for Carson Hocevar to shoot the gap in the inside and shovel the 23 out of the lead and out of a chance for victory. After all that, Bubba fell out of the lead, back deeper into the pack, but was still able to salvage an 8th place result. Consistently wise, 2 top 10s to start the season, not a bad start for Bubba, but at the same time, both races, he's been quite capable of winning. We all know how good of a drafter Bubba Wallace is at this style of racing. He's run well before. Of course, he's won at the Talladega race, albeit it was rain short in 2021. But this guy knows how to draft on these style racetracks. Just a bad mistake by him on that last restart, leaving up enough room for the 77 of Hocevar to get on the inside and shovel the 23 out. I mean, he did congratulate his teammate Tyler Reddick winning, saying it's good for the team. But at the same time, you could tell he wanted it as badly as Tyler Reddick and everybody else around him did, because he's like, my teammate wins the previous week, I got to back it up. And it nearly worked for the 23 car. But once again, he gets shuffled on the backstretch coming to the white flag where everybody is on their own. There's literally nothing you could do about in that instance. But despite falling short after being the best Toyota all day yesterday, Bubba still had a really good car. And I get a feeling it'll be a few weeks, but he probably will start getting a few wins this season. Number 3, up and down day for Carson Hocevar. If you were Carson Hocevar yesterday, you were making storylines for the right reasons and the wrong reasons, which is par for the course for that young man. So we all know how good of a car and how close he came actually to winning the Daytona 500 last week when he got turned on the last lap by Eric Jones heading off into turn 1 and sent Hocevar into the apron, and he had himself for 18th place. Well, he started there yesterday, but he would quickly work his way up inside the top 10. And you don't remember how good he was in this race last year. In the spring, we finished second, and he was good in the summer race despite a little damage. He had a very good car, and he's good at this style of racing. But early on, after he got himself inside the top 5, he fell back in a hurry because he had a right front tire go down. He hit the wall up in turn number 3, then he hit again in turn 2, so he had to come down pit road and get the tires changed and rejoin the race. Here's the problem. He fell 2 laps down in the process, and when he got caught by the pack, he had to stay up there and stay with these guys just so he could try to get one of his laps back. Well, he got the lap back at the end of the first stage because he was the only car 1 lap down, or at least off the lead lap. He got one of his 2 laps back, and then a couple laps later, after a wreck happened in turn number 3, that put Hocevar back on the lead lap. But also, while that was all happening and he got his laps back, he actually had a situation where he lost his right side window. And that's mandatory for every car in all these races on the big tracks, the drafting tracks, the 1.5 miles, the 2 miles, the short tracks, the road courses. You have to have that right side window intact. And he lost it. So thankfully, he was able to get it on his car when that caution happened, and he was able to put it back on and get back in the lead lap. But for the majority of stage 2, he hung at the back and decided, I'm not going to push the limit. I know we got a good car, but let's save it for the final stage. And then comes the final stage. The 77 is charging his way back up through the middle of the pack. But then he had a little bit of an incident off of turn number 4 where he got into the side of Joey Logano, where it does look like, though, that Hocevar was holding his lane and Joey was coming down to cut him off. And I think it was kind of Joey's fault at the time. Didn't time it right as far as coming down the block, and the 22 goes around into the grass, bringing out the caution flag. But Hocevar still finds himself up inside the middle of the pack with a chance at victory. And we all know that this young man's aggressive. He's not going to apologize for it, but you sometimes have to know how to be aggressive the right way versus the wrong way, because that'll leave a lot of people frustrated at you. So he found himself up inside the top 5 in the closing laps of the race. And then when we had that big right down the back stretch that led to overtime, Hocevar restarted 4th on the outside lane right behind the front row of Bubba and Bell. But when we took the green flag for the first overtime restart, Hocevar dropped back a little bit to get a gap, to get a big run on Christopher Bell when he needed to. And when he got the push from behind by Ross Chastain to carry the momentum, he saw that the 20 car actually opened up a little bit of a gap, and Hocevar thought, oh boy, this is my chance at the gap, let's go. Unfortunately, there was not enough room for that, and it got the 20 car out of control and sent him up into the outside wall, thus taking Bell of an opportunity to win back-to-back spring races. And the 20 team was not happy with Hocevar's actions. And I will say, that was not a good decision by Hocevar. There was little hole there. There was not enough room to shoot through there. If Bell had gone a little bit higher and a little bit wider, then that was the perfect move to shoot through and have a chance of the victory. But at the end of the day, that was still a bad move by Hocevar. And he had a chance on the final restart when he was able to get that run down the backstretch with 2 to go before they took the white flag to shuffle the 23 out. But when the 45 had a big run the inside and had help from the Toyota Briscoe, Hocevar was pretty much without any help right there. So he fell all the way back to 5th, but then picked his way back up to finish 4th at the checkered flag. So he knows how to get around at Echopark Speedway, and he's off to a pretty good start speed-wise this year. However, the aggressiveness, he needs to try to find a way to balance it out and not be too aggressive that'll leave drivers upset and not willing to work with him at these drafting style tracks. If he could be aggressive the smart way, then maybe guys will reconsider their thoughts about him and maybe will work with him more often. But despite the great run yesterday, it was an up and down day for driver the number 77 in Hocevar. Number 4, chaos. If you want that type of stuff here at Echopark Speedway with this style of racing, you will find it. Now, yesterday in the first stage of the race, it was relatively tame, no cautions at all, just guys side by side, back and forth, dropping back versus moving up forward when the handling became a factor, especially with how high the sun was in the sky. Then we get into stage number 2, and that's when the intensity really started to pick up. Running at about the middle of the pack, there was a little bit of contact where Christopher Bell got into Josh Berry, and that sent him up into Bell's teammate Ty Gibbs. It turned Gibbs down into the pack. It hit the door of Christopher Bell, who kept going, but Gibbs ricocheted back up the track, hit the outside wall a ton, and collected the 21 of Josh Berry. A few other guys got some damage in that wreck. Thankfully, both drivers, Gibbs and Berry, were okay, but their days were officially over. Then we get into lap 106, where we're in 1 and 2. There was contact in the pack between Austin Dillon and Riley Herbst, where Herbst got on the inside of the 3, spun the 3 round, and unfortunately Herbst lost control of his car and went up in the truck and collected poor Ricky Stenhouse Jr. off of the runner-up from the 500, Todd Gilliland, and BJ McLeod. A couple of other guys did have some minor damage in that wreck, but none too severe. By the way, shout out to Cole Custer, shooting the gap, accelerating at the right time to get through that wreck and get through without any incident whatsoever. That was impressive. But a couple of those guys got caught up in that wreck in turn number 2, and then in the middle part of the second stage, Kyle Busch, running at about 12th spot, starts to lift off of turn number 2, and gets a tap from behind by Noah Gragson, which sends Kyle around down the back stretch and into the inside save for Barry Wall, thus knocking the guy out who won the truck race on Saturday, an unprecedented 9th victory for Kyle at Echopark Speedway in the truck series. I mean, at times, though, you saw Kyle get up in the top 10. It looked like maybe he had the speed, but that incident off of 2, obviously, he just lifted off the throttle and unfortunately got tapped from behind, and it just again, the reaction, the heads up time here happened so fast you can't really do much. So unfortunately, Kyle Busch knocked out in that wreck. Then in the final lap of stage number 2, Kyle Larson, who had probably one of the best cars early on in the race, is running high in turn 4. Shane Van Gisbergen running really strong in the top 10, coming to the end of stage 2, racing for position. All of a sudden, Larson decides to cut down the track to block the 97 and timed it wrong and came down, hit him, sent the 97 around, and the 5 car ricocheted up into traffic and into the outside wall, knocking him out of the race. I don't know what Kyle was thinking right there. You could have held your lane up top and not gotten wrecked. You would have maybe gotten passed by SVG, but you're still getting stage points. I don't know what the thinking was there by the 5 car, but that was just a big mistake by the 5 car of Kyle Larson, thus knocking him out of the race. The SVG's day wasn't done yet. He was actually the next caution because he lost it off of turn number 4, went through the grass, but didn't suffer any damage at all, and would carry on. He, by the way, came back and finished in 6th spot. Then, as I talked about earlier, that wreck that Tyler Reddick was a part of was what happened off of 4, where Joey Logano was checking up to try and slide in line, but Denny Hamlin was there, and they make contact, and Hamlin gets into the wall and comes down the track and collects Tyler Reddick, and a couple other guys piled up in it. Alex Bowman, Connor Zilic, Chris Buescher, many other guys got caught up in that wreck on the front straightaway, where most of them were actually able to continue. Some, however, were not quite as fortunate, and their days were pretty much over. But that wreck was the wreck that Reddick got caught up in, but it didn't stop him from gunning up there and winning that race, I'll tell you that. But then when we get into the closing laps of the race, there was an incident, as I mentioned, Logano and Hocevar got into each other. But then with about 2 laps to go in regulation, William Byron, who had one of the fast Chevys yesterday, he got a little loose up in turn 2, hit the wall, because it looked like the tire was going down, but I couldn't tell which tire it was. And then he comes down into traffic, and unfortunately, the last second, he clips the 2 car of Austin Cindric, sending him around to the pack and collected multiple cars in turn number 3, including Logano, Denny Hamlin, Cole Custer, John Nemechek, Noah Gragson, Cody Ware. A lot of guys got caught up in that wreck in turn 3, which led to the red flag. And of course, we all know we had the 2 overtime restarts, and the first overtime had the wreck with Christopher Bell after Carson Hocevar went through a gap that was not wide enough. But a lot of chaos yesterday at Echopark Speedway. I mean, we all remember what happened at last summer's race, where we had the big wreck at the start of the second stage that pretty much took out half the field and left the other half of the field clean and green, or 70% healthy, 30% damage, still carrying on and running for the win towards the end of that race. But yesterday, these guys, when it came down to crunch time and the moves got a little aggressive, these guys would tend to get into each other and they would pile up. But a lot of chaos yesterday took out a couple of key contenders. And number 5, the racing. This racing at Echopark Speedway just keeps getting better and better and better. I'm just going to get this out of the way right now. Echopark Speedway at Atlanta is the best racetrack on the schedule. I said it and I meant it. This track is just absolutely awesome. These guys just get up on the wheel. You're seeing the drivers, handling, again, as a factor, but it's all about the driver control, seeing what these guys could do when they're racing side by side with these slingshot moves, inside, outside, 3 wide, sometimes 4 wide, because that happened a few times yesterday. But man, oh man, these guys will just absolutely go for everything possible. And again, the higher you up in the front of the pack, the better chance you have of keeping your car up there and better handling you will have. If you're in the middle, tail on the back, you're not really going to get anywhere unless if something happens, and your car is not going to handle the best. It is going to be a handful where you're going to need a lot of pit stops and a lot of adjustments, and more importantly, you're going to need to roll the dice with track position to get yourself up there to prevent yourself from being stuck in the middle of the pack where there's a possibility that something could break out and you could get caught up in it. But yesterday, these guys just put on a thrilling show. I mean, just remember when Atlanta Motor Speedway used to be the 1.5-mile track where guys would spread out for at least 2 to 3 to 5 seconds, and handling was a factor, and of course the tires would wear out quicker than normal. And it was really not that fun of racing for a long time. Atlanta used to be a relatively rough racetrack, even though there were times in the earlier years of the early 2000s where you would see these guys spread out but still race hard, and tire fall off meant a lot, but it wasn't as much as the last couple of years had been before we reconfigured the track. But ever since we did this reconfiguration specifically for the next gen cars, the racing in all 3 series at this track has been absolutely amazing, and it's certainly one to go to. I would certainly love to get to Echopark Speedway in the near future and go to one of these races, because these will have you on the edge of your seat cheering for your driver and just watching what is about to happen at the end of the race. It's so much fun, and I love what Marcus Smith and SMI did to this racetrack. A lot of people probably criticized at the beginning. I think this was a great decision, because now we're getting the best racing product we've ever seen. And be quite honest, it might be a little more entertaining than the drafting style racing we see at Daytona and Talladega, because unlike Daytona and Talladega, these guys aren't fuel saving in the middle of stages. They're going for it. Daytona and Talladega, they just run 3 wide for like 20 laps consecutively and save fuel, running at about a lower pace than what they normally are at high speed. That's just not fun, and something that needs to be worked on. This type of drafting racing is what we need. So now we're done with drafting racing for a while. We'll take a break and we'll resume it in the spring at Talladega. But now we're off to some traditional racing. In a ways, we're going road course racing for the first time in 2026 next week at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Of course, you all know last year we had a little new trim to the racetrack as far as the configuration to allow for more passing opportunities for these guys. And I gotta say, last year's race with this configuration worked. It was a great race, and we saw great battles on the track. You saw tire wear become a big factor, and this will be the first race of the season points-wise with the new short track road course package with 750 horsepower, which leads to better acceleration off the corners, burning of the tires. Tire management will be a key factor, but you're going to see the best of the best show up next weekend. I know there will be some of our top road course aces that can't wait to get here. So, can Christopher Bell back up his win from a year ago? Will Shane Van Gisbergen carry on his role of being the dominant guy on road courses? Can Chase Elliott reclaim the throne of road course king? Or will the newbie, who is an accomplished road courser, Connor Zilisch, spoil the party? I can't wait to see what happens next week under the desert sun in Texas. So, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Tyler Reddick and the 45 team on back-to-back wins to start the 2026 season. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!